Hello, Bambi and the Prince of the Forest. Bambi was born in a quiet place in the forest under the trees. His brown coat had lovely white spots. "What a beautiful little fawn," said one of the birds. All through the forest, birds sang and called, but Bambi heard only his mother. "Bambi," she said quietly to him, "my little Bambi." Soon, Bambi began to look around. He smelled the flowers and watched the birds. He looked up at the big blue sky and jumped around in the grass. Then he lay down next to his mother, safe and happy. One day, Bambi's mother told him, "You are bigger now, Bambi. I have to go to the meadow and find food. Stay here and don't move." She turned and ran away, and soon the forest was quiet. Bambi was afraid. He waited and waited, and listened. Then he started to call for his mother. "Why are you crying?" a voice asked, and Bambi looked up. A big stag stood in front of him. He was tall and handsome, and he had a beautiful brown coat and big strong antlers. "Can't you stay alone?" the stag said. Then he walked away into the forest. After that, Bambi's mother often went away and left him, but Bambi didn't call for her again. He wanted to be like the tall, handsome stag. He wanted to see him again and say, "Look at me, I don't call for my mother." Bambi was older now, and soon his spots went. His mother began to take him to the meadow. He loved it here. He saw the big blue sky, felt the hot sun, and was happy. Many deer came to the meadow with their fawns. And Bambi soon had two friends, Gobbo and Faline, a brother and a sister. Bambi jumped and ran with them, and their mothers watched and laughed. There were stags in the meadow too, but they didn't speak to the fawns. They only speak to the older deer, Bambi's mother told him. Bambi always looked for the tall, handsome stag in the meadow, but he didn't see him. One day he told Gobbo and Faline about the stag. He was taller than the stags in the meadow. His antlers were bigger, and he had a beautiful coat, Bambi said. "Our mother told us about the stag," said Faline. "He's the prince of the forest. He's the biggest stag in the forest. He speaks to nobody, and nobody speaks to him." "I'm afraid of him," said Gobbo, "and I'm afraid of man too." "Man?" said Bambi. "Who's man?" Gobbo and Faline looked at him with big eyes. "Don't you know, Bambi?" they said. Then Faline ran away through the grass. "Come on, let's go and play," she called. The next day, in the meadow, the deer suddenly held their fawns. Then they stood and listened. They were afraid. "What is it, mother?" Bambi asked. "What are we listening for?" "We're listening for man," said Bambi's mother. "Who's man?" Bambi asked, but his mother said, "Be quiet, Bambi, listen." Soon the deer said to their friends, "It's okay now, go and play." But Bambi didn't want to play. He walked away into the forest. Who was man? And why were the deer afraid? He wanted to know. He threw and threw, and then he looked up. There above him was the prince. "You're not calling for your mother now?" the prince said. "No, prince," said Bambi. "I can stay alone now." "Good," said the prince. He started to walk away, but Bambi said, "Prince of the forest, please, prince, who is man?" The prince looked at Bambi. Listen, smell, and see, he said slowly. Then he turned and left. The summer wind, and soon it was cold, and snow danced in the air. At first, Bambi liked the snow and played in with his friends. But the animals couldn't find food, and they were hungry. Gobbo was the smallest of the deer, and he was weak and tired from the cold. The deer were always together now, cold and hungry. One day, Bambi's mother suddenly looked up. The birds are calling. Bambi's mother suddenly looked. The birds are calling, she said, and they are flying out of the forest. Something is not right. The deer stood quietly and put their noses in the air. Then Bambi smelled something. It was a strong smell. He didn't know the smell, but he felt afraid. It's man, his mother said quietly. Bambi, my little fawn, run out of the forest and don't stop. Don't dig